おかえりなさい。あなたが新しい場合、意味です。はじめまして。よろしくお願いします。今日は日本語を学ぶ方法について話します。私は1年間日本語を学ぶです。日本語は難しい。とっても難しいです。That's it for the Japanese introduction. I hope you enjoyed a little bit of that. I'm not very good at things like that, but I'm better in conversational Japanese. But yes, I hope you enjoy this video. I'm going to be sharing with you a couple of sort of tips and tricks that I would have used if I'd have known them sooner when I was learning Japanese, and things that I'm doing now to help me along my way. And I hope they will also translate to other languages so that if you're learning Korean, Chinese, Spanish, French, these tips can help you as well. So let's get on with my first tip. And so my very first tip would be to find the reason why you want to learn a language or why you want to learn Japanese. Learning a new language is really difficult, so to acknowledge the reason why you want to learn that language will make it so much easier for you, and try and keep it with you and remember it throughout your learning process. And so for me, I've always loved Japan and Japanese culture, and I've just been so curious in wanting to learn the language. There's just something so exciting about the language to me. I can't really put my finger on it, but that keeps me going and that spurs me on, that I find it so interesting, and I absolutely love the kanji characters, let's be honest. So if you can find that reason, then that will really help to spur you on throughout learning your language. Moving on to my second tip, and that is to learn hiragana and katakana. Hiragana is the most commonly used Japanese script. It consists of 46 characters, and it's almost considered the original Japanese script before kanji came in, which are the Chinese characters. If you spend time looking at kanji, hiragana and katakana, you'll notice the difference between all three. Hiragana, I will put some characters up on the screen for you, but it has some lovely curves in the characters. I actually found it quite easy to learn hiragana, but it is very time consuming. You need to spend a long time looking through hiragana charts and memorizing each and every character. So katakana is the script used for any words outside of Japan. So words like hamburger, igirisu, kora, they are all foreign words. So to us, igirisu is where we live, but in Japan it's foreign, so you spell it in katakana characters. I still struggle with katakana, I don't know why, it just doesn't stick in my head. But again, as you can see, I will pop some characters here on the screen. They are very noticeable with their straight angular lines, and you would think because of that they would be easy to remember, but for me they're not, for you they might be. My third point, following on from my second point, would be to avoid romaji. And romaji are English characters used to spell out Japanese words, and that would make Japanese a lot easier for people like you or I who are English speakers. When it comes to reading and writing in Japanese, it makes life so much more difficult, and you have to start all over again by learning hiragana, katakana and kanji is so difficult as it is, so I would not add the fourth romaji to it. After you've learned hiragana and katakana and you have established why you want to learn the language, I would consider if you want to go down a self-learning route or a tutor. And now I've done both. I would say that the tutor was better and the tutor was easier for me. At the minute we're trying to move house and everything, and my life is a little bit chaotic, so I don't really have time to sit down with a tutor and do the homework, but I really enjoyed having a tutor. I did it all over Zoom. It was so easy. I had a Japanese native speaker as a tutor, and she was amazing, and she taught me things that you wouldn't necessarily see on the internet. Learning how to introduce yourself and saying watashi, which is me or I, so you would say watashi Aimee desu, but actually that just looks very robotic in Japanese, and so you would just say Aimee desu because you are clearly referring to yourself, so you would not say watashi. So I found things like that really beneficial in having a tutor, and you could talk things out, you could really practice speaking and having conversations in Japanese. I thought it was really good, but obviously they can be very expensive, so if it's not for you, then self-teaching isn't too bad either. I have been trying to teach myself Japanese for a few months now, and I have a lot of resources that I have been using. So the first thing is that I have a Japanese dictionary. I know it can be a little bit robotic sometimes, but in the middle there is a very useful section about day-to-day things, and like this is a section on counters. In Japanese they have two number systems, so depending on what you're speaking about and what you're writing, you would need to use different counters, and so you can see there it's got them all lined out, and it's really easy to just look up a word and see how you spell it, and then if you know how to conjugate, then you can do that yourself. So if you're self-learning or learning through a tutor, my very biggest tip would be to write everything down. I have 4 notebooks here full of Japanese writing where I have been practicing. This is my kanji notebook, and these are my hiragana and katakana notebooks. And I can't emphasize enough how important it is to write everything down, not only to practice your hiragana and katakana and kanji if you are learning that, but also to get used to the word. It's one thing trying to learn what the word is in the language, but it's something else completely trying to get your head around the characters if you're not used to Asian characters like me. You'll start to notice that your English descriptors next to your Japanese sentences will start to disappear or get smaller and smaller, and they'll turn into tiny little prompts. And that was a moment where I was really quite proud of myself, and I gave myself a little pat on the back because I was able to read and understand what I'd written in Japanese, and I could say it, and I was very pleased with myself. One thing that I have really been challenging myself to do is to keep a diary in Japanese, and sometimes I will obviously put little English annotations in there so that I can remember what means what, or I will look up in my dictionary, because obviously I'm still very beginner in my Japanese language learning journey, but I will look in my dictionary, find a word that I want to use, conjugate it and use it in a sentence in my daily diary. But this has been really helpful for me to learn everyday words, into learning how to express myself and my feelings, and to explain what I've been doing and what I do day to day. I'd really like to emphasize that whatever language that you're learning, try and keep a diary in that language, even if it's just 2 words, and then over a couple of weeks it'll increase to a sentence, and then 2 sentences and a paragraph. You'll really notice how much your language skills have increased, your vocabulary has increased. You'll give yourself a little pat on the back when you realize how far you've come in your language learning journey. Another big tip is to read Japanese books. And so I have Japanese stories for language learners, and I've had this for quite a while now, and these are really short stories and I really enjoy using it. So as you can see here, there is the Japanese side. We have the tiny little hiragana symbols on top of the kanji to help you learn kanji, and then on the other side we have English where you can translate the story. I try to cover that section up with paper when I'm trying to read in Japanese, and then at the end of the story, let me find it, there are translations. So any words that you might not understand or any kanji that you might not understand, the translator of the book has popped a little note at the back so that you can increase your vocabulary and learn it a little bit more. So it goes in order of the story, so like things like once upon a time we know in English, but you don't know that in Japanese. It's not a word that people use every day. So mukashi mukashi was a very weird phrase for me to hear at the start of the story, and then I looked back at the translator notes and saw that it means once upon a time. If you're learning Japanese, or if they have these in any of the languages, I would really recommend, because this is very helpful. My tip for learning kanji, I'm no expert at all in kanji, but kanji can be quite overwhelming. You're very outfaced with all these very complex characters. I think there's over 2,000 kanji. So I have 2 tips really. My first would be getting a learning kanji book, and my boyfriend actually got me this for Christmas because he knew how hard I was finding kanji. And so this book goes through all the most common kanji, and this is the first volume, so it's quite beginner, which is great for me. But it shows you the stroke order for every kanji, and then it has a space underneath where you can practice your kanji writing. And then I have my, let's open it to a blank page, a kanji book where I can practice my kanji writing in here. I think a great tip for learning kanji is that the character itself is formed through different characters, making one single character. It's trying to break it down a little bit and then relate it to a story. So a forest is quite easy to remember because it's 3 trees. If you just try and remember the kanji for what it is, it's quite challenging and it's really difficult. But if you try and put some sort of story to it, like I saw someone on YouTube had, I can't remember what kanji it was now, but they had remembered the kanji through a story that Will Smith had told on a American TV show, and so that's how they remembered that kanji, because it reminded them of Will Smith. So things like that make it so much easier to remember any kanji. I don't have any exciting stories like that, and so trying to fit that theory with other kanji that you're learning can help to make things a little bit easier. Another tip for learning kanji that I learned from my favourite Japanese YouTuber, Sanbonjuku, is that you shouldn't set out to only learn kanji the way that you learn everything else and just to revise, because that will never happen. And even people in Japan don't learn kanji that way because it's too difficult and there's too much to learn. And he recommends that you, for example, read a book, and if there's kanji in there that you don't understand or you haven't seen before, you look that up, you memorize that, you repeat it, you learn it, and then go back to what you were doing. And that is how you should learn kanji. So I do a mix of both, but I really like the suggestion that Sanbonjuku has of learning as you go, because yeah, there's over 2,000 kanji, you're never going to learn all of them in one go. So my next tip would be to focus on learning particles and sentence patterns. And if I'd have known this at the beginning of learning Japanese, then I think I would have found Japanese a little bit easier. Like, granted, it's still very, very difficult, but I think I would have found it a little bit easier. So particles, what are particles? How would you define them? Okay, Japanese particles are suffixes or short words in Japanese grammar that immediately follow the modified noun, verb, adjective, or sentence. Their grammatical range can indicate various meanings and functions such as speaker effect and assertiveness. Yeah, I never would have been able to describe that to you. And I believe there are a lot of particles, but I think there's sort of the 8 that people use the most, and you can Google them really quite easily and you can find those and learn those, and I think they get you through everything. So obviously they all mean different things and go in different places in different sentences when you mean different things, which I found really difficult. So learning these early on I think can be really, really helpful. And so it took me a long time to figure out things like wa and ga. They are particles that are topic markers, but they are also audible commas, and that's something that obviously we don't have in the English language. So that was something that I really needed to get my head around. But once I learned it, I think I really sort of got into a groove with learning the language. And then with sentence patterns, obviously this will really help you to put the particles in the right place and to say a full sentence in the correct order and properly. And so in English we would say I'm going to Kyoto, but in Japanese you would say Kyoto to I am going. So it's very different, and it's just getting into a mind space of that is the pattern that you need to speak in, and so that would make everything so much easier. And so my next tip would be to immerse yourself in Japanese culture, be it food, music, TV programs. If you like anime, this is perfect for you. I don't like anime, but I love watching Terrace House. Konbanwa, Terrace House wa? I don't know the rest of it. Terrace House is a little bit like Love Island, but better. It's not got the really cringy bits in it, and it's a lot more modest, and it's in Japanese, so if you're learning Japanese it is great. It's on Netflix. And obviously we're on YouTube, so I'm not going to forget my favourite YouTubers. Sanbonjuku I've already mentioned, his videos are all in Japanese, which I love. You can add English and Japanese subtitles so that you can practice your listening and reading skills at the same time, and you're also learning what he is talking about on the videos. He has videos ranging from the absolute beginner to very advanced Japanese, and I really love his content. It's great because it's all in Japanese, so it's what you want. And I think he's one of the people as well that doesn't agree with romaji, so I really like him. And then another YouTuber that I love is Yuko Sensei. She actually has a lot of videos about particles that I was looking at the other day because I was looking to expand my particles vocabulary, and she's got some really, really good insightful videos. She's also really good at explaining things. Her videos are in English, but all the text on the screen is in Japanese. You really need to know your hiragana and katakana before moving on to those videos. She does have some romaji in it, but I try to ignore that as much as I can. But the content of her videos and the quality of the learning materials are really, really good, and I love her videos. My last tip, which is probably the worst, is repetition. I mean, no one likes repeating things over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, but you've probably realised that everything I do is repeated. I mean, like learning kanji, I will write it out 10, 20 times, give it 5 minutes break, and then I will continue writing it out and I will remember that kanji. And it's the same with forming sentences, and saying it out loud helps, writing things down really helps. It's a lot, but repetition really does work, and I imagine it's the same for every language, be it Asian or other languages in the world. Repetition really is key, and it's so boring, but you really need to do it. So yeah, I'm sorry about that. But all the repetition is worth it, I promise. It's that moment when, if you have a tutor and you can actually have a conversation in Japanese, or you're watching Terrace House and you can understand bits of what they're saying. It really is it's an exciting moment. It really makes the repetition worth it when you get that sort of breakthrough moment where you understand what people are saying and you can take part in conversations, and you can express yourself in another language. I think that's a really important factor as well. So thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you got this far, please put a little Japanese flag down in the comments below. Give me a big thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and please subscribe if you want to see my future content. I know this is a little bit different to what I've been doing, but I just want to broaden my horizons here on YouTube and show you all other interests that I have, not necessarily fashion and lifestyle. I guess learning a language is lifestyle, isn't it? Let me know if you're learning Japanese, if you speak Japanese already, if you're learning any other language and you have tips for me on learning Japanese or a language in general. Please let me know, because it all helps. So thank you for joining me, and I will see you on the next video.